What's up, guys? Welcome back to Startup Growth Stories from Product 10X, a startup accelerator for early-stage enterprise SaaS startups with a focus on product-led growth. If you are an entrepreneur with a great idea or a founder with a super early-stage company, you are in the right place. Stick around to get insights from other startup founders and learn from peers.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody. This is Suresh Madhuvarsu, your host today. I'm actually a startup advisor as well as a product with CentSai. And today what we thought is we are bringing in Arindam, the CEO and founder and the visionary behind CentSai as a company. Hey, Arindam, good morning. Welcome.
Hey, Suresh, how are you?
Yeah, pretty good. Thank you. So I know we've been planning to do this for a long time to really talk about and then really give the world a preview into what we are doing at CentSai in general, and then give them the whole world view of where we are going, our mission and the vision, definitely. So before we get into this great discussion, can you please give an introduction and we'll go from there.
Sure. First of all, thank you very much for having me. This is definitely a pleasure and an honor. I'm Arindam Nag, and I co-founded CentSai around 2016. And this is my first time I became an entrepreneur. Until then, I've mainly been a financial journalist, working for publications like Reuters, Wall Street Journal, Dow Jones, working in India, the UK, and the US. And the genesis of CentSai was actually created when I was writing a column called The Herd on the Street for the Wall Street Journal. And I was covering the credit crisis. And I was in an interview on BBC television in London. And one of the presenters basically asked me, hey, why do Americans take so many stupid decisions when it comes to their financial lives? This is a country that has such a great education system. And over time, that question actually haunted me for many years. And I realized that financial education is not taught the way it should be taught to people. So that's how CentSai was born. CentSai today is establishing itself as a financial education provider. We make finance easy, and we actually are attracting people who probably wouldn't have looked for financial answers to their financial questions, but we're organically attracting them. And that's the magic about CentSai.
Wonderful. So I think that's an interesting point how you brought up, where this is not actually something where you just imagine one fine day and then came into the existence, but I think we have seen people struggle through the financial crisis. Yeah. And sometimes those are very painful lessons for everybody, right? And can you briefly talk about what's your mission with the CentSai? The pain point is very clear, but I think what are you really thinking through that you want to bring to the world from CentSai?
Yeah. So that's a good question, Suresh. There's a saying about young kids when they say, look, I'm bad in maths, or I hate maths, or I'm bored with maths. No one is bad in maths. You just had a bad maths teacher in grade 5. That's really it boils down to. If you're taught something well, if it's fun, you will learn it. And finance is exactly like that. The main mission for CentSai is very simple. We believe that every single human being with the internet connection, he or she has a human right to financial literacy. So how do we do that? Right. We create great content, and the content itself attracts people. Like, we do personal stories, we do quizzes, we do videos that people would stand in a Starbucks queue. And my goal is that even if you have 2 minutes, you would be watching a CentSai video or taking a CentSai quiz that'll help you not just learn about finance, but it'll also provoke thought. Do I need to spend on this? Or what is the best credit card I should be having? Do I need a credit card? Or do I need another credit card? These are thought-provoking questions that I want to see people discussing, sharing, thinking about it, and basically embrace good financial wellness as part of their lives.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for talking about it, because as a father of 2 young kids, I do know when they go to the school, they are taught everything but to do with the finance, right? Yeah. Which is where I think to your earlier point of the mission, when these kids become adults, and then they have to make financial decisions, and at that point of time they have no clue, they have no background on what is a sound financial decision. And the idea, if I'm hearing you correctly, CentSai wants to really help those kind of generational kids or even adults to make the right financial decisions.
Yeah,
Right.
and actually, Suresh, what you're really saying is, can we have a system by which we can help our children respect money, respect wealth? And I'll never forget this. Many years ago, my co-founder, Doria, her youngest kid, I think she was like 8 or 9 years old, and she was having a temper tantrum and she wanted something. And basically her mom said, look, not this weekend, next weekend. And she said, why? I said, well, we don't have money this weekend. Then her response was, no, you have money, you take that card and put it in the wall, the money will come out. And I realized that as parents, we actually do not do a good job in helping kids who are asking for pocket money or asking for something. We don't teach them the way to respect money. And there's a reason for that. It's not that we don't want to, we do want to, but we don't have the right tools. So CentSai is trying to work through that process. It's not about educating the kids or millennials or Generation Z. It's also about helping parents. So one of the products that we have is a learning management system that we've just launched a few months ago. And we have fun videos which are actually helping kids as young as 13, 14, to understand how to manage money, what is debt, borrowing money. But that's not enough, because kids start using money since they're 6 or 7 years old when they want their pocket money, whether it is $5 a week or $10 a week. We should be starting at that age. You cannot take money for granted. And that's the problem that we need to solve, everybody.
Completely. Awesome. So that actually brings up a good point for me to say, who are the typical users of CentSai platform and the products in general?
That's a great question. So when we first started, and let me just preface it, many of you listeners to this webinar have worked for big companies. And I've only worked for big companies in the past, and I saw many mistakes launching a product, then getting customer feedback. As a startup, and Suresh is better than anyone else, having advised so many startups, we don't have enough resources to burn. So we have to be at least 80% correct in recognizing the pain points in the market before we can even put pencil to paper, because we can't afford it. So what my co-founder and I, what we did, we realized fairly early on that what is the financial illiteracy, for lack of a better word, is a function of bad system. So we wanted to find out what the system is. So that system incorporates the education system, the banking system, the financial advisory system. So when we actually sat in classrooms, we spoke to over 1,000 people. We did SurveyMonkey surveys like pretty much twice a week for almost a year. And what we found out was people likes to hear a story. They like to hear success stories. They also like to hear painful stories, because when they hear a painful story, they say, wait a minute, that's me. I have a problem. This story tells me, CentSai's story is telling me I have a problem. I have to fix it. But then how do we boil an ocean? What we did was, in 2016, we first targeted millennials. And we found out that the articles that we were writing were not only attracting a lot of millennials, but we were also attracting a lot of female millennials.
Wow.
And between a man and a woman tends to not ask questions. They are shy. They want to find answers themselves first, number one. Number two, women are taking more control of their financial lives. So we found out that was reflected in CentSai's audience. So in 2018, 2019, when we were looking at our CentSai.com data, we saw that roughly 67% of our readers, of over 2 million people who visited our site, were women, and 77% were 55 and below. So we knew that we had a product. What was the product? Below 55, the digital generation, number one, and number two, the female gender. And that's when we started thinking about, okay, how do we monetize this product? Do we go B2B? Do we license it? Do we remain B2C? How much money will that cost us? So that's when we started thinking about, okay, now that we have the early contours of something that's working, how do we scale that up? How do we make that into a corporation? That's the sense of the story in a nutshell.
Wow, that's amazing. I know last time when we looked into it, definitely, I think, I've been working with you for the last couple of years for sure, with you and Doria, the founders of the company. And I'm super excited to share with everybody that, where we started and then where we are today. I think we have a tremendous journey, and we have brought in so much of innovation to the market. One is, of course, everybody sees what is coming out of the company. But one thing that I want to focus really on is, what's your idea of the company culture? And then what is the culture that you are really trying to build in within the company? Because the reason why I feel it is super important for any startup is, initially during those first couple of years of the company starts, the initial heights are super critical for anybody. And that really either makes to really go to the next level of the company, or sometimes those initial heights also sort of slow you down. So can you please talk about what is your vision of the culture?
Yeah, I think that's a very interesting question, because I remember, when I look back at our relationship, you definitely, one thing that I want to say to all listeners, that one thing that Suresh and his team has done with CentSai is introduce what I would say, for lack of a better word, product discipline. Now, why is it so important to have discipline behind product? Our company was created by former journalists. We understand content very well. We understand productizing content. But when you are transitioning from, which we did, from a mere content platform into more of a SaaS platform, there are many other things to consider. Then the role that content plays moves from 100% down to 50%. The remaining 50% encompasses user experience, feasibility, seamless transition from paying for something and getting something. All that makes a great SaaS solution. That is what CentSai is evolving into today. And Suresh is playing a huge role along with our technology team. What we have fostered within our company is, and at least I try to do to the best of my ability, is let the big ideas flow in all the time. I always tell people, look, just let's assume that money and resources is not an issue. What's the best you can do? Let's have 10 ideas onto the table. And then we can prioritize based on resources. If we don't do that, we are never going to hear those great ideas that could be number 9 or number 10 in the list. Because guess what? That number 9, number 10 could well be number 2 tomorrow, because the market has changed. One thing that we do acknowledge is that our company it straddles 3 sectors. One is education, number 1. Number 2, FinTech, number 2. And number 3 is media. And all 3 industries are moving, progressing at breakneck speed. And we have to cope. We have to keep pace to the extent that the barriers to entry is higher and higher every day. So the culture is basically twofold. Let's ensure that people are thinking all the time, thinking outside the box. They're communicating and transparent about the ideas. But at the same time, and we have a couple of people whose job is to ensure that, okay, wait a minute, this will cost us so much money. Let's do it next quarter. But let's do these 3 things that were not on the list right now. That's the culture of the company.
Yeah, absolutely. So the reason why I would probably dig a little deeper on this topic is, so when we say think out of the box, I think it is actually easier said than done in a way, because we have the founders, the management team, and then the people who are actually on the front lines of the business. Sometimes they have a lot of working knowledge because they are directly working with the customers, prospects, and the end-to-end cycles in general. So how do you sort of percolate those ideas from everybody that is coming, irrespective of where they are in the company or the org chart? How do you sort of bring that up in the value chain?
So that's a good question, which actually boils down to the role that I play in the company. There are a couple of things that I have held on to, and I intend to hold on to for the next few months at least. I try to do most of the recruitment, even if I'm not bringing in people in the first list. I do want to ensure that I'm meeting them before they join the company. It allows me to achieve two things. One is I do want people to get to know what the vision is, because financial education is still abstract to some extent among many people. So I want to ensure that they know exactly what the vision is. Number two, I actually know, and I'm not trying to be arrogant here, I do know who in my company speaks German. I know who in my company has worked for a nonprofit, who in my company has written books. I know people's individual skills. Now, why am I saying this? It's because someone may have a skill set, but just because he or she is an intern doesn't mean that he or she cannot lead a project. Right now, the young woman who's actually is about to lead some of our marketing efforts. She doesn't even live in the United States. She lives in Ireland. She's finished her master's degree in digital marketing, but I have gone through her curriculum and I know there's certain things that she can bring to the table we need 5 minutes ago. Now, I can wait and recruit someone, which will take me another 8 weeks, but why should I waste time? So that's how the company culture has revolved around people getting to know what they are capable of doing. They bring ideas. We do foster transparent calls. Again, mind you, during the time of COVID and after, it hasn't been easy for many companies to manage remotely. We have Slacks, various tools that allows us to get into people's ideas. They are recognized. We've also introduced a weekly newsletter where people can talk about the ideas as well. So that's pretty much how we ensure that people actually have a voice at the table.
Absolutely. So I think that really summarizes one aspect for me, which is for any startup, especially during those initial set of years, recruiting the right set of people is so critical for anybody. And Arindam, you made a great point where you want to at least spend some time with the new recruits even before they are hired in the process, so you know exactly what each and everybody is capable of, and really help them grow into the situations. Because as you rightly said, I think this is actually also something that we've learned advising so many companies, where it's not important to actually get super experienced people, but it is super important to get super curious people. Because at the end of the day, yes, I'm sure people have some wisdom out of the experience that they have gone through, but at the same time, as long as you are giving them the right nurturing, and then people are asking the right questions, and then they're getting into the right set of leads and experiences, they will grow into those roles. So that's a great point. As a segue, I would like to really understand, I know you guys are based out of New York City, and then everybody were at some point of time coming into the office and everything. How has been the last 1 year in general for you and the team? And how did you guys really cope up with this whole organizational change that has brought in with the COVID?
Yeah, I often wonder that how difficult it would be for us to transition back to working in an office. I do miss my whiteboards. I do miss sitting around and potentially sharing a pizza on a Friday afternoon with my colleagues. But I have to say that the people who have endured the last 12 months, I think they'll be very, very successful in their professional lives, because working remotely, trying to think what the other person is thinking via Zoom call, penciling notes quickly on Slack, or exchanging emails, getting a team together, managing time, everyone's calendar. These are skill sets that we often ignore, but they're incredibly valuable, and they make you a much more disciplined professional. Imagine, I still remember like one of my, some of my favorite colleagues who I would always trust for the right advice. I would walk up to them and tap their shoulder, say, hey, do you have a second? And we'll walk to the coffee machine and talk. You can't do that. So now I have to first ensure, does he or she, is she in another meeting? I have to check his calendar, but that's the right thing to do, is actually not taking people for granted. Is actually the whole idea of being disciplined, keeping deadlines, sending out messages, updating your presentations. These are all that we have learned to do in a disciplined way in the post-pandemic period. So I have no regrets that we have been working from home. I have no regrets that I have reached out to people worldwide to work for me. Like I would never have thought that head of my product would be in the West Coast. Suresh, you, my mind would have been, no, head of product should be sitting on my right-hand side, should show up at 8 o'clock in the morning, work together. But in the real world, it doesn't work. Talent is not local. Talent is international, global. Head of my Sensor One Sales is living in London. I would have never thought in a million years that head of my sales of my key product, market product, will be sitting in London. But I've embraced that. Without the pandemic, I wouldn't have even recognized that skill in me to build a team across time zones.
Absolutely.
I'm grateful. I'm grateful for the last 1 year.
Completely. So I think, for us, I think, what we are realizing is at the end of the day, previously, there is that anchoring point to say, hey, you know what, because I'm a Silicon Valley company or I'm New York-based company, my talent should be around, which of course, comes with its own limitations of whether it is about the salary expectations or the commute. And I'm sure, I think people are people, they go through a lot of things in their life. Yep. And having a expectation of 9 to 5, in the startups, it's not even 9 to 5, whatever it takes, right? Now those barriers are broken. People are able to balance their personal lives and professional lives. And I think, that's really where we have seen the communication has become much more intentional. Of course, the water cooler conversations is something that we all miss, for sure. You talk about a movie, you talk about how your weekend was, but at the same time, really in terms of the work productivity, we have seen it has really skyrocketed for many startups in that sense. That's a good view. So now I think a discussion, which is the education tech in general has been booming for sure. And with the whole of Udemy, Coursera, what we typically call as the massive online courses, for sure. That's one trend that we have seen when we sort of started advising the startups. And then that actually transitioned into what we call as the universities, which is universities realize that they have all these courses that their professors keep teaching, and they know they have the PowerPoints, they have every material that is out there. But then with the whole of the digital transition, how do you keep up with the digital users? And now many universities now have gone online, and then they are providing these certificate programs, right? That's one. And then the other ones is really where what we call as the creator economy, right? Previously, of course, you yourself have been a journalist, Arindam. Previously, the content has to be produced by journalists to deem to be authentic. But now with the whole social media channels, anybody can create the content. And I think the whole aspect of the content creation has become much more dynamic in a way and democratic, right? With that brings in the opportunity of the whole of the education edtech sector in a way. Can you talk about, I think, how CentSai is in a unique role and position to actually help the edtech sector to really get there?
So I think this is a two-pronged question. So let me just address the growth of the education technology. Now, absolutely. So when you have a company like Baiju, for instance, from India, which has now become a unicorn. And by the way, just for the benefit of those of you who do not know, any company that is considered, any company that has a valuation of over $15-20 billion is now it is considered a unicorn. Some companies are approaching $100 billion as well. They're called the super unicorns. Baiju is one of the unicorns. Now, education technology is going through a revolution for two reasons, which is that knowledge is basically the barriers to entry into the knowledge spectrum has broken down. You can be a teacher sitting in Beijing, you can be a student sitting in Manhattan, and you can be communicating with each other. And that's where education is going. The big question that needs to be solved is the quality of education. Will there be a gatekeeper? Will there be an ombudsman whose job would be to ensure that the education is correct? Now, that is something eventually the market will determine. All that you need is a couple of bad courses, some complaints, and then things can go pear-shaped. We have seen that with the private education institutions during the 1990s, where many private colleges came up and then they failed. The same thing is going to happen with the education sector, which brings me to the next level. Because education and knowledge and content has been democratized, it has also been breeding a lot of, for lack of a better word, fake news or fake content, which has a detrimental effect on people's minds. So there's always going to be a demand of high quality content. When I say high quality, number one, factual. Number two, honest and transparent and backed by evidence and data. And the role that CentSai is playing is we are always letting people know that there are many ways to manage money, but there's always one right way to manage money. So how do you define the right way? While we are not financial advisors, we provide financial guidance. What we tell people all the time is that there are certain disciplines you have to follow before you make a financial commitment into something. So cryptocurrency, for example, we only started writing about cryptocurrency very recently. And there's a reason for that. We never believed until very recently that people who are struggling with finances or who have student loans debt or are saving for the kids' education, we never encourage them to invest in cryptocurrency. Why? It's too volatile, number one. Number two, it's not recognized by the majority of the governments today. Even now, there are no standards by the governments, but people are putting in place. Right. And this has been happening in the last 6 months. So in the last 6 months, we have been beefing our cryptocurrency coverage. Now, I'm not trying to play God here, but what we are trying to play is the overall welfare of people is important for us. Managing risk, not promising hyper returns, not promising anything. We don't promise anything. What we do is we guide people to look at various metrics, various anecdotes, various events to ensure that we're taking the right decision.
Absolutely. That's
what high quality education is all about.
Yeah, the one thing that I really took away from this conversation about the edtech sector is the one that you talked about. We are not playing with people's lives. You want to be super responsible, because at the end of the day, money can be made. I think if we produce a nice, great solution, great product, there will always be users who are willing to pay. But we don't want to misguide users with whatever information out there. So that's really where I think what you were talking about, providing that right content and verified content is super important for the individuals as well as the businesses to take care of.
Got it.
That's right. Sounds good. I have personally learned a lot of things for today, for sure. So when we look into the whole journey so far, I think definitely there are multiple product lines that CentSai has launched. CentSai.com is B2C. CentSai One is definitely more of a B2B SaaS product for sure. And then the whole of the education technology, I know we have the LMS in that sense. So we have 3 products in general at this point of time. Now, I want to sort of, we have looked into the past and then present. Now let's shift gears to say, what are you really thinking through for the next couple of years on where you want to see CentSai to grow into?
Yeah, so I think there are 2 ways of looking at this. One is our core offering is only one: financial literacy, financial education. And what we are calling as products are merely distribution channels to various segments of the population we are targeting. So our flagship product right now is CentSai1.com. We launched it last fall, and we're getting momentum among financial advisors, the banking sector, financial planners. It is a licensable library of content. We're going to add some more tools and more features that will allow a financial advisor to license our library, white label it, and also use it as a potential awareness tool with its end customer. At the end of the day, creating content is very expensive. Creating content, it needs different skill sets, and a lot of financial advisors don't have that skill sets. A lot of banks, credit unions do not have that skill sets. So CentSai One becomes a great product for them to partner with. So the next 24 months, we want to scale that from coast to coast in America. We've also launched a Spanish version, which is really meant for financial institutions who are targeting the Hispanic population in America. Like when we talk about financial literacy, we are talking about first generation immigrants as a huge segment of the population who need to understand how the American financial system works. Credit score is number one. A lot of people don't know what a credit score is. They've come from other countries, they live here. You may have a great track record of paying bills in India or in the UK. I remember when I came from the UK in 2001, this country treated me like a 17-year-old. They gave me a credit card. I was already earning $100,000 equivalent in the UK. I owned a property, but when I come here, my first credit card, it had a limit of $250. I was like, what? So that's how they treat you. Now, the point is, if I had known this, I would have planned my finances differently. I would have carried some money. I would have put it in the bank account. I would have done so many things. Now things are changing. There are a couple of fintech products that actually allows you to import your data from other countries when you're coming here. So CentSai One growth is going to be one of the main areas. What we also be doing is looking at some key markets. For instance, one of the markets that we're looking at is how can we not just provide good content, but also, let's say, embed the content with gamified calculators for credit union customers, for bank customers. Some of them are already using our content, but can we allow people to spend more time on our client's website to not only read the content, but also play with our calculators and understand their financial lives even better? So those are some of the additions we'll be doing. But the primary target for the next 24 months is establishing CentSai's brand, CentSai's products and philosophy, and make it a crucial piece of the US financial system.
Wonderful. That makes sense to me. So I think, we have talked about a lot of things for sure. And the way previously we keep talking about, I think the software is eating world. I think now artificial intelligence is eating the world. That's how we keep talking about it. But at the same time, how do you think people can come in, participate in the journey of CentSai, whether it is users, partners, banks, whatever it may be? Can you talk through on what kind of partnership models and how people can participate in this revolution?
Yeah, so one thing I do want to say that CentSai will be dead if we were not open to partnerships. So we want to be as open as possible. One of the things that we are doing is we are increasingly opening up our CentSai library to other partners. So one of our main partners that we are talking to right now, they would like to upload some of their content on our library. One thing that I do want to do is I do want to democratize the access to quality financial education content, which means I want CentSai One to be the go-to destination in multiple languages, anything to do with financial literacy, which also means that I need high quality partners, either to contribute technology or contribute something else that will make CentSai One a much more meaningful and robust partner for the financial system. So one thing that our product team and our content team are opening up to is, okay, rather than doing it ourselves, can we partner with other people? Indeed, we do want to own the IP on certain key technologies, because that only adds to enterprise value. But things like an email distribution system, we don't need to build it on our own just yet. We can license it from other people. But one area that we're definitely going to see more partnerships is content. In 3 years' time, I do expect CentSai's original content to be maximum 25%, with the remaining 75% coming from other providers. This model works. Netflix is a good example. Amazon Prime is a good example.
Yep.
They have their own original content, but they're also distributing other content from Disney and Paramount and other places. So that's what CentSai needs to be if it has to grow exponentially in the financial literacy space.
Absolutely. For terms, I think we definitely, of course, keep referring to that as a marketplace of the content system. It doesn't really matter who is bringing in the content, but the content itself is so powerful, whether it is about the banks or financial advisors or the community banks, because the one thing that we have definitely seen in the last couple of years is the banking system is evolving rapidly, and then they are focusing now in a good way towards the end user and the consumer, right? No more is the time where, okay, this is just a banking product, you go deal with it. But now people want you to go spend some time on their banking website, learn about the 401k, Roth IRA, or how do you want to save for your retirement. So all this comes to one place, and then CentSai and then the content is actually in a great place to actually position and then serve these different use cases that we have there. I think today I've definitely learned a lot of things. I'm sure I think we had a great discussion on the future of CentSai for sure. Are there any parting comments at this point of time?
I think the only comment I would make is, look, CentSai is still in startup mode. We are growing, we are learning every day. We've made mistakes. We're probably going to make a lot more mistakes, but we are very open to listening to people. Those of you feel that you have a role to play in financial literacy in your backyard, in your country, in your marketplace, feel free to email me, arindam@centsai.com, or hit me up on LinkedIn, or hit up Suresh, and we can chat. Financial wellness is something that impacts everybody. From the day you're born, your grandparents are giving you some money the day you're born to go into your account till you die. We have a long way to go. And CentSai is going to play a huge role in the way we are teaching our kids to respect money and managing money ourselves. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Arindam. So the one thing that I will say before we close up the discussion is, I think companies really have multiple ways of their vision and mission, but I feel with the whole thing, I have definitely a great history with you, Arindam, and Doria for sure. But I think what I've definitely seen is it's not about the AI technologies, it's not about the SaaS, but CentSai is a mission-driven, do-good company that is really revolutionizing the whole of the financial wellness category within the FinTech system. And definitely do check out what CentSai is all about. Hopefully this gave you a lot of sense in terms of what CentSai is up to, and then what CentSai is going in the next couple of years. So Arindam, best wishes for sure. And let's catch up with the whole unicorn status pretty soon. And till then, bye-bye. Have a great day.
Thank you. And thank you once again for having me.
You've reached the end of another episode of the Startup Growth Stories from Product 10X. Don't forget to sign up to our newsletter or review startup material at product10x.com. Until next time.